On today's show, we know what the Cavs are going to look like this upcoming season. But what about 2 years from now? What about 3? What does the future of the Cleveland Cavaliers beyond this season hold for the wine and gold? We'll talk about that on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name's Danny Cunningham, and you might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. Make sure to drop us a 5-star rating, leave us a nice review, and of course, be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do us a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for us, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today, I want to talk about what the Cavs are going to look like in the future and what they need to do in order to build a sustainable winner. Now, we know pretty much what the Cavs are going to look like in the 2025-2026 NBA season. They've got 13 guys under contract. At some point, they'll sign a 14th. I would expect they go into the season with 14 guys on the roster, but this is a team that is going to be built around Evan Mobley and Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland and Jarrett Allen and Max Strus and DeAndre Hunter and so on and so forth. We don't have a lot of questions about what they're going to look like. We might have questions about how they perform in the postseason, but that's a different conversation for a different day. So what I wanted to talk about on today's show is, well, what happens after this year, regardless of the outcome? Say they win the title, say they don't win the title. I don't know. I can't tell the future, but I do want to try and look into my crystal ball a little bit and try and envision what the Cavs look like beyond this season, because I don't think that living in the second apron is sustainable forever. I think it's probably a 2-year thing. Maybe it's only a 1-year thing, depending on the outcome of this season. But I do think there is going to have to be a future around Evan Mobley that doesn't necessarily exist on the roster right now. And I think that is an interesting, fun summer conversation to have. So one of the questions that I got on social media this week from somebody, and I don't remember who it was, or I would give it credit, but they asked if the Cavs were preparing for a Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley future. And I do think that is an interesting way to think about things, because it is very clear Evan Mobley is the future of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, whether or not he becomes a top 10 player in basketball this season, I think is going to say a lot about whether or not the Cavs win the title this year or reach the finals this year. I think that those are goals that are in sight, of course. And if Evan really just continues to develop and takes a step forward this season, that was very similar to the step forward that he took last season, then I do think that we will be looking at the Cavs as a finals team, at the very least, if not a champion. But at a certain point, the Cavs are going to have to reimagine the roster around Evan Mobley in a way that maybe nobody else on this roster is still here when that happens. I do find it interesting to think, well, how long does the Evan Mobley, Donovan Mitchell core, and even you can add Darius Garland in that, but I think he's probably just a little bit of a separate conversation. How long does this core stay together? And what does this team look like 5 years from now? What does this team look like 3 years from now? I think those are very interesting questions to ask. And I think that it is fair as of right now, considering how good Evan is, how good Donovan Mitchell is. And of course, things happen and we cannot tell the future. I want to just very much emphasize that this entire episode is all speculation. There is no reporting in this episode. This is all speculation about what the Cavs could look like a couple of years from now. And of course, this is all speculation because nobody knows the answer to this. Like, I would bet that Kobe Altman might have an idea of future moves that he's going to make, but he doesn't know what the Cavs are going to look like 2 or 3 years from now. Nobody does. So this is, I just, again, want to caution you, this is all speculation in this episode. This is not reporting. So I do think that there's a world where a couple of years from now, we are looking at an Evan Mobley and Donovan Mitchell, superstar duo is probably the way to term it. I think there's also a world a couple of years ago where we are looking at an Evan Mobley, Darius Garland superstar duo. I'm not so sure that both those guards are going to be on the roster together 3 years from now. And that does really get into an interesting thought exercise about, okay, well, let's take a look at the Cavs current roster, right? Pull up their, as you listen to this, pull up their Spotrac page, and you can see what everybody's contract is. You can see, Evan Mobley, pretty big extension that kicks in this year. Donovan Mitchell has this year and then a player option. Jarrett Allen, he has a contract extension that kicks in next year. Darius Garland making a good amount of money. Dean Wade going to be a free agent after this year. I think an interesting thought exercise is, well, how many guys that are currently on the Cavs roster finish their current contract in Cleveland? I think that there are a few layups. If you look at, obviously, Dean Wade, maybe they trade him, maybe they don't, but he expires at the end of this season. So I think it's probably fair to say, well, Dean Wade probably meets that criteria. He probably, and maybe he gets traded this year, maybe he doesn't. I don't know. I believe no at this point. But does he finish his deal in Cleveland? And I think going up and down the roster, it's very interesting. Look at Evan Mobley. I think that he is the one guy you look at and say, yes, that contract that he signed, which is the very, very, the 30% of the cap max, where it's going to get up there and it's going to go through the 20, basically until 2030, kind of, in lockstep with Kobe Altman and the rest of the front office. That is something I would expect Evan Mobley to finish his contract with the Cavs. Donovan Mitchell has this upcoming season, next season, and then a player option. Does he finish that contract with the Cavs? I would like to think he does. I don't see why Donovan Mitchell would not finish this contract with the Cavs, and I would not be surprised, truthfully, considering the direction this franchise is going, and there's been no noise around this, but I would not be surprised at all if Donovan Mitchell signs a contract extension in Cleveland. I think that when he was acquired via trade a few years ago, everyone wanted to say, well, he's just going to, find his way to New York. And maybe one day he does play for New York. But the more and more I think about this, the more and more I look at this, I wouldn't be surprised. And of course, these things, you never know what the end of a guy's career is like. But I would, at this point, I think, be more surprised than not if Donovan Mitchell didn't play the rest of his prime in Cleveland. Now, I don't know that he's going to play his entire career in Cleveland, just again, because it is impossible to predict what the end of a career looks like for somebody, especially a player as good as Donovan Mitchell. And he is going to be 29 years old. But I do think that the rest of his prime years are going to be in Cleveland. And I would not be stunned if he signs another contract extension with the Cavs. That would not be a surprising thing to me whatsoever. Then you look at Darius Garland's contract, and I think this is the first one that is a question, because I don't think Evan Mobley finishing his contract in Cleveland is a question, and I don't think Donovan Mitchell finishing his contract in Cleveland is a question. But Darius Garland has this year at $39 million, next year at $42 million, and the year after that at $44 million. There are no options in his deal. It is all fully guaranteed. He's making just over 25% of the cap this year, and then 24% of the cap in 26 and in 27 and in 28. I could see Darius Garland not finishing this current contract in Cleveland. If Garland is traded, I don't think that would be the biggest surprise. I'm not saying I expect it, but he's the first guy I look at and say, you know what? I could see the last year of that deal, and Garland is extension eligible this summer. I don't know that there's going to be any talk of a contract extension. I've not necessarily asked around about that, but I've not heard anything about it either. But could he finish? Could he be traded next summer? Could he be traded 2 summers from now? I think, considering where the Cavs are at financially, where they are going to be a second apron team for sure this season. There is no doubt about that. They will be a second apron team this season. With that, they can't be a second apron team forever. They can probably be a second apron team next season, but after that, I think you're probably going to see the Cavs make some cost savings moves to get out of the second apron a couple of off seasons from now. Darius Garland, I do think, could be one of those moves. I think that if Darius Garland is traded on this contract, that is something that should not come as a surprise to anybody, not because Darius Garland is not a good player, but because if you look at the way that teams are built, if you look at the moves that teams do need to make in order to stay financially stable And really, I think even more than financially, because I don't think that the Cavs are scared to pay the tax. I don't think the Cavs are scared to pay the financial penalties that come along with being a championship caliber team, with being a very expensive team. And they are going to this year be the most expensive team in basketball. They're not scared of that, but it's the other restrictions that makes life really difficult for them. When you think about not being able to aggregate players in a trade, having your draft pick frozen, not being able to trade picks 7 years out, that becomes the biggest issue. And I do think at a certain point, you're going to see the Cavs make moves very similar to what the Boston Celtics made this summer, where they had to trade Drew Holiday, where they had to trade Kristaps Porzingis in financial saving moves so that they could feel as if they can be a little bit sustainable. And I know that you can instantly come back and say, well, they did those things because of Jason Tatum's injury. And maybe part of it, I don't know that they would have torn down the same way had Tatum not torn his Achilles, but they were going to make financial moves all along. It had been the worst kept secret in NBA circles from, truthfully, probably January on, that Drew Holiday was going to get traded by the Boston Celtics this summer. It was something when I went to Boston for the Cavs Celtics game on the final day of February, I believe it was February 28th they played. That was the Cavs' crazy comeback they had. I left that building knowing, okay, Drew Holiday is going to play the rest of this season in Boston, and then he's getting traded in the summer. Like, that is one of the, obviously not a takeaway from that game, but there was very little. I had no reason to doubt that he was, or I had no reason to believe, that he was going to be on the Celtics beyond that year. The Cavs at a certain point are going to have to do something like that. Maybe it's not as extreme as Darius Garland. I don't know. And we are too going to have to see exactly where the cap is at when that time arrives. Maybe it's not as extreme as Darius Garland, but the Cavs are going to have to make a certain move like that. Okay, so aside from Garland, aside from Mitchell, aside from Mobley, who else can finish their contract in Cleveland? We'll go through the rest of the roster. Plus, I will tell you why the Cavs really couldn't make one of the big trades this summer. We'll dive into that next right here on Locked on Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. It's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings back the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink. Certainly one of my favorite golf drinks, minus the alcohol. Turns it into a quick, energizing shot, whether you're sinking birdies like I was the other day or making memories with friends. This one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest. Some days on the course or even off of the course, you just need that little extra boost to stay sharp and energized. The other day, I had a golf outing on Monday. We came in third. We were 12 under, only had 3 guys, so I'm not necessarily mad about it. We played well. I hit the ball very well, feeling really good about my golf game right now. But then I had to go right from that to football practice because I do coach high school football in the falls here in Cleveland. And I will tell you exactly what I wish I had. I wish I would have had a 5 Hour Energy Transfusion because I needed the energy in the absolute worst way. That's part of the reason why this podcast is coming out Tuesday afternoon as opposed to first thing Tuesday morning, because I was just absolutely exhausted and I didn't have a 5 Hour Energy. But the golf was good. I just wish I would have had a little bit more energy. And golf is all about good times with good people and, of course, good flavors. The grape ginger lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the beverage cart. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, you can use the promo code LOCKEDONGOLF, that is LOCKEDONGOLF, to receive 20% off your order. Again, that is code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your order. This offer only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, the way that I kind of am trying to do every time I go out and golf, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion-flavored 5 Hour Energy shots today. Thank you again for making Locked on Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. Make sure to drop us a 5-star rating, leave us a nice review, and of course, be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked on Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. So we are looking at the Cavs contracts, and I think that Jarrett Allen is the next most interesting one. I think that of the core 4, if you want to call it that, and again, if you listen to the show, you know that I'm out on the core 4 as a thing. I think Jarrett Allen's a very nice role player, but I don't think he's a core player. Jarrett Allen this year is on the final deal or the final year of that 5-year, $100 million contract that he signed shortly after the Cavs acquired him from the Brooklyn Nets in a trade. That deal at the time looked maybe a little bit big, but in hindsight, like it looked like an amazing deal because now Jarrett Allen making 12.9% of the cap this year. So let's just call it 13% of the cap this year for borderline all-star production from a center is a steal. Certainly in the regular season when he's proven that he's a very, very good player. So that is obviously a great contract, but he, if you remember, signed that contract extension last year. He signed a 3-year contract extension worth a little over $90 million. That deal means that next season, the 2026-2027 season, so not this fall, but 1 year from right now, Allen will go from making $20 million to $28 million. That is the biggest raise that he could have received from the Cavs without reaching free agency. If they would have waited until he played out this season, was a free agent, the Cavs could have signed him for more. He could have gotten more. I don't know if the Cavs would have been willing to offer him any more money than what he's going to be making. But he's going to be making a significant more amount of money. And it's for that reason, as I look at what the Boston Celtics did this summer, with who they traded away, I look at Jarrett Allen and say, it's really difficult for me to envision Jarrett Allen playing out all 3 years of that contract extension again. Not this season. Jarrett Allen is going to be in Cleveland this season. Would be very surprised if he is dealt. But that contract extension, I would be more surprised if Jarrett Allen played out that entire contract extension in Cleveland than if he played out the entire contract extension elsewhere. I look at next summer, depending on what happens next season, I could see Jarrett Allen being dealt next summer. Now, I have said this for the last 3 years, so maybe he's just never going to be traded and will forever be on the Cavaliers. I don't know what's going to happen exactly, but I look at that contract and say, when the Cavs are going to need to make a cost-cutting move, I think Jarrett Allen is probably the first one that comes to mind. Partially because as I look at it, he's not the best player at his own position on this roster. And it's not to say he's not good because he's very good, but he's not Evan Mobley. And I don't know that next season the Cavaliers can put $78 million worth of money towards the center and power forward position. And that's before you think about what else they could have, because they're going to need more than just those two guys. But between those two guys, I don't know if you can afford to pay those two $78 million. That is just a team building thing that I don't know makes a lot of sense. Even if the Cavs are not going to trade Jarrett Allen for nothing, because of course you can't trade him for nothing. And this is part of what I want to get into in a minute. But Jarrett Allen making that amount of money just might not make sense in Cleveland. So I look at the future of who's going to finish out their current contract in Cleveland. I think Jarrett Allen is the prime candidate, considering that there are 4 years left on his current deal, including that 3-year extension. So he's got 4 seasons before he's a free agent. I find it very difficult to believe that Jarrett Allen is going to play 4 more seasons in Cleveland. And again, this almost has nothing to do with Jarrett, the player. Just has everything to do with how much he makes and how long that contract is and where the Cavs are at in terms of their financial situations. There are a few guys that I think look at as relatively easy bets to finish in Cleveland. And of course, these guys too that I'm going to bring up right here are extension eligible right now. But DeAndre Hunter, he has this year and next year. I would imagine he'll be in Cleveland both of those seasons on his contract. However, he can sign an extension this summer. I've not heard anything about a potential extension for him, but I do think if he does not extend, I think that contract is one that makes sense considering what he does, that he plays a position that the Cavs don't have great depth at least in terms of his exact skill set. More importantly, his size, being 6'8". Max Strus has this year at 15.9, has next year at $16 million, making 10% of the cap this year, 9% of the cap this year. I think that contract has matured into a very good team-friendly deal for what Max does bring. I think his next deal, depending on what he looks like a year from now, I would imagine that he's going to be making upwards of $20 million on that contract. So I do think that one has aged into a very, very good contract for the Cavaliers. But if he does not sign an extension this year, I don't think that he's somebody, and maybe he could be an add-on in a trade, but I look at him as somebody that could finish that contract in Cleveland. I think that is something that could make sense. But the other thing that you do have to remember is sometimes you don't want to lose guys for nothing. So it is, of course, possible that somebody like Max, if the Cavs don't extend him, somebody like DeAndre, if the Cavs don't extend him, those guys could be traded for something else that can help right now. If that something else is a little bit further away from free agency. Think of the way that, and I hate to do this considering what this week has meant or what this week has been over there, but think of the way the Cleveland Guardians have operated, where they don't let guys get to free agency. They will trade them for something younger and cheaper because that is an organization that refuses to spend money, which is the complete opposite of the Cavs. But the Cavs also have a salary cap to deal with where they cannot upgrade in certain ways, where the Guardians just choose not to upgrade in certain ways. But that's a different conversation for a different podcast entirely. But they don't let guys get to free agency. And I could see a world in which the Cavs don't extend DeAndre Hunter this summer or next. They don't extend Max Strus this summer or next. So they do trade them so as to not lose them for nothing in free agency. That wouldn't be the worst team building exercise from Kobe Altman when you think about it. Lonzo Ball is another one. He's not extension eligible this summer. He is, however, on a very team-friendly deal, $10 million this year, $10 million next year for what is a team option too. So the Cavs really could just say, well, Lonzo couldn't stay healthy this year, and we don't know, of course, what this year is going to bring for him. But the Cavs can just get out of that for nothing next year. So I think that he might be the easiest layup as a guy other than Evan Mobley, Donovan Mitchell, like the non-star category. I think he's the easiest layup to yeah, that guy's probably going to finish his contract in Cleveland. Dean Wade, I think, is in a very similar spot. Jalen Tyson, I'm not so sure. We have to know. You really can't answer that because you have to know what he looks like on the floor. I think the same thing can be said kind of for Craig Porter Jr. And of course, Larry Nance Jr. is on a 1-year deal. And this leads me to the one guy left. And I'm not going to talk about Tyrese Proctor because we have no idea how much money we have no idea if he's an NBA player. But Sam Merrill is the one guy I've not mentioned. So this summer, Sam signed a contract with the Cavs, a 4-year deal worth $39 million. So he is making 8.4 this year, 9.1 next year, 9.8, and then it goes up above 10 for the final year of that deal. This is, and I think that the instant reaction to Sam's contract was that's a lot of money, or certainly maybe more money than I thought Sam Merrill would get. And I do think it's a reminder of how valuable movement shooting is in the NBA. But I do think that this is also something you have to look at if and when the Cavs need to make a big deal, or if and when the Cavs are out of the second apron and can aggregate salaries again in a trade. Sam has a deal that I think, considering his skill set, is a very tradable contract. And I don't know if he's going to finish this deal in Cleveland. I would bet probably not, but I do think that this is a contract that maybe the shock value of it was a little bit much. I look at it and say, yeah, that's a deal that I look at and say, that is one that the Cavs front office could trade a year from now, and there would be a lot of takers for it. I think that one is going to look pretty good a couple of years from now. Now, I mentioned earlier that the Cavs couldn't make a big move this offseason, and I will tell you the real reason why they could not play in the Kevin Durant trade sweepstakes. That's straight ahead right here on Locked on Cavs. Thank you again for making Locked on Cavs your first listen today and every day. If you're watching the show on YouTube, do us a favor, hit that thumbs up button for us, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked on Cavs content, a proud part of the Locked on Podcast Network. The Cavs were, of course, rumored to be in the Kevin Durant trade sweepstakes. They had some sort of dialogue with the Phoenix Suns. We don't know how extensive said dialogue was. But ultimately, Kevin Durant was never going to be traded to Cleveland. And Kevin Durant was never going to be traded to Cleveland for a number of different reasons. One, I don't think Kevin Durant wanted to extend in Cleveland. Two, Kevin Durant does not fit the Cavs timeline. And I know that the timeline talk can be a little overrated right now because the Cavs are in championship or bust mode. But as I say all the things that I've said about what the Boston Celtics did this offseason, and they are the franchise to watch because the Cavs are going to go through what they went through. The only question is whether or not they're going to have a championship ring too. So the Celtics had to trade away some of their pieces, and they had to trade away some of their pieces to cut costs and, of course, try and find ways to rebuild in the future. Now, the pieces they had to trade away in Kristaps Porzingis, who really can never stay on the floor, and Drew Holiday, who is in his mid to late 30s, and I just don't think is going to be the same player. I don't think he was the same player this year, are probably pretty different than the pieces that the Cavs are going to have to trade away if and when they make these trades. So I think that the biggest reason why, and of course the second apron means you cannot aggregate salaries unless that move takes you out of the second apron. So the Cavs really, for Kevin Durant and or LeBron James, would have needed to trade upwards of $70 million in order to take back the $50+ million in salary that those guys make this year. For the Cavs to do that, there wasn't a way without trading Jarrett Allen or Darius Garland, in some cases, both of those guys, plus then DeAndre Hunter or Max Strus. Like, it would have taken a lot. That would have been a trade in which the Cavs were not only sending out more money and talent, in my opinion, than they were bringing back in, they were also doing that to get much older. And the biggest problem there, like with Kevin Durant signing that contract extension with Houston, is he going to finish his career with the Rockets? I have no idea. I bet he has no idea. LeBron James is on a 1-year deal. And the bigger question is he going to play more than 1 year? And what is he going to look like? Because he's a man that is in his 40s, and what he is doing is unprecedented. But part of the reason it's unprecedented is it's really difficult to do. So if LeBron James is not all NBA level good next year, would that surprise anybody? Maybe, but the only reason it would surprise you is because he's LeBron James and he's the greatest basketball player ever. Not because, oh, this guy's going to be 42. Of course, he's not one of the 15 best players in basketball. So with that line of thinking, the Cavs are going to probably have to trade away some guys at some point. If they trade those guys away now and then get older by doing so, once you make that trade, once you trade for a Kevin Durant, for a LeBron James, that asset is depreciating every single day. So I think, and you know the meme of like the domino, the like the stick figure claymation guy pushing over a really small domino and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and going up. Had the Cavs made that trade, and maybe it would have resulted in a title this upcoming season. We have no way of knowing this. But that would have been the first domino of Evan Mobley asking out, or the Cavs needing to trade Evan Mobley years from now. Because as I mentioned at the start of the show, at some point, there will be a core of the Cavaliers that is built around Evan Mobley, where Evan Mobley is no doubt the best player on this team. Like, Evan Mobley right now is 24, I believe it is. I don't know his exact birthday, so I don't know his exact age. But Evan Mobley right now, yes, just turned 24 last month. So at some point, he's going to be 27 or 28, and he's probably going to be one of the 5 best players in basketball. I don't think that's like some absurd thing to say. If he's going to be on the Cavs are going to look a lot different now. Now, maybe he is the type of guy that wants to spend his only career on one team. I don't know. I don't know how Evan feels about that. For example, go look at Giannis right now with Milwaukee, but also look at Giannis right now with Milwaukee, where the Bucks, built an old team around Giannis. And once that team was done, they really couldn't trade for good young pieces because nobody wanted their old pieces. They tapped out, and then the Bucks have been a disaster since, and they have the best player in the Eastern Conference and one of the 3 best players in the entire world on the roster, and nobody thinks they have any chance to win a title next year because it takes more than one guy. Evan Mobley, I'm not saying he's going to be honest. I'm not saying he's going to be an MVP, but he's going to be at some point. I think we will look at him and say, that guy's probably a top 5 player in the world. And if you want to have a competitive roster around him, trading Darius Garland or Jarrett Allen for LeBron James, I think would have nuked any chance of that. So that the real reason, sure, we can point to the restrictions the second apron have. We can point to all those things. The real reason the Cavs couldn't make a trade like that this summer is because if they want to be good around Evan Mobley for a long, long time, that would have sapped their ability to do so. And I think because of that, you have to look at this summer and say, yeah, that wouldn't have been the right move. And it's probably for the best that the Cavs didn't make it. But thank you for making this show the right move for you by listening your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. Make sure to drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. And of course, be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching this show on YouTube as we get out of here, do us a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for us. Click subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. I will be back tomorrow talking more about the Cleveland Cavaliers.